All right, we are back. This is The Lineup. I'm Dave Prodan, and we have a very special guest with us today. There's no way around it. He is renowned within the surfing community and widely recognized as one of the best storytellers surfing's ever produced. His publications have been in pretty much every magazine you can count, and he's now appointed as the big chair at the Bible of the sport. He is the editor-in-chief at Surfer Magazine. Look, every time I read whatever this guy writes, I not only learn kind of the surface level details, but the kind of Gladwellian second conversation, the more interesting things, deeper insight into surf culture, competitions, the bio athletes, behind the scenes stuff. It's also interesting. He's also had, outside of the surfing world, accolades. According to quote unquote Sports Illustrated, he is one of the premier subject matter experts in the field today. So that's very nice. And before taking on the big job at Surfer, he's been covered in Surfline, Red Bull, ESPN, X Games, the Surfer's Journal, a number of brands, Surfing Heritage and Cultural Center, and he's even worked at the WSL itself. With over 25 years experience of the game, his influence is extended well beyond his role as a journalist. He also happens to be a good friend and good human being. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Jake Howard. Jake, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man.
Wow, thanks, Dave. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it very much.
Someone sent me, fortunately for us, I think, you and I are of a similar age bracket, and we cut our teeth in the storytelling realm. Both I was on the journalism side for a bit too, but at the ASP at the time, 20 years ago, it was a little bit pre-digital, pre-social media, which in hindsight seemed like such a nice time. But someone recently sent me a photo of the group of journalists that were in Tahiti. I think it was 2008. The fashion definitely dates us at the time, but it was a good crew, man. You and I have known each other for a long time, and I'm stoked to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Yeah, man, we go back a ways, back to early magazine days.
Right.
Yeah.
Man.
And then your tenure as the North American media guru, down there in the shadows under Surfline at the Huntington Pier.
That's right. Yeah.
That office. And that's funny. Yeah. 2008, I think in that photo is you're in there. I'm in there.
Binzy's in there. Carol's in there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite a crew, and the length of the board shorts don't lie.
That was, I went, man, they really were like middle of the shin bone. That's what we were running at the time.
Yeah, no wonder I couldn't stand up on my surfboard. I still can't stand up.
I never wondered why I couldn't, but I like that. I'm going to use the board shorts. So.
It's not the board shorts, it's the booty.
That's right.
It's never the operator error. That's for sure. It's the board. It's something.
I love it. Well, man, I'm at home in Ventura today. Where are you talking to me from?
I'm at home in San Clemente today. It's a beautiful day. Not much surf, but the water temperature right now is phenomenal. So feeling good about that.
That is nice. I mean, even though you don't have much surf, I was joking with Mitch Salazar last week. I'm like, because he's like, man, he goes, there's finally waves in Southern California. And I'm like, hey, look, geography lesson here. Southern California is Point Conception south, my man. I'm up here in Ventura County, and I can attest that north of Point Magoo, there's not been a lot this summer. We haven't really had anything, but you're right. At least the water's warmed up a little bit.
Yeah, is it warm up by you guys too?
Yeah, relatively speaking. It never gets that warm, but my little guy, the twins are 10 and a half. They'll probably turn up in the background at some point, but he's been doing Evan Caples' Ventura surf school every summer out of Momentum board shop.
Oh,
and usually he does, he's done it like 3 years. He usually does the first week of summer. And this year I'm like, dude, I'm still in like a 4-3 with hood and booties. Like, I'm not putting you out at Mondo's. Like, it's like 48 degree or 58 degree water, man. There's no way I'm going to make you do it. So you end up doing it middle of summer. Still pretty cold, but yeah, the last couple of weeks is warmed up.
That's good.
Yeah.
And hopefully we are kind of just getting into the unofficial start of summer here in Southern California anyway. So I'm always a big fan of September and October.
For sure. Well, we're going to dive into the Surfer magazine of it all in a little bit. But while I have you, since this episode's going to air the week of the Lexus WSL finals, and you happen to reside in the town where that's going to be, I want to pick your brain about
let's
this.
do it.
All right. Yeah. So
I'm excited. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. I'm excited too. So So general thoughts on the linear progression format of the finals, right? So for listeners out there, the fifth seed surfs against the fourth seed. The winner of that heat surfs against the third seed. The winner of that heat surfs against the second seed. And the winner of that heat, it's a best 2 out of 3 matchup with the number 1 seed to take the world title out. This is something that Travis Logie came up back in like 2018. We had a whiteboard on the Gold Coast. And I'd like to say it took days and weeks for us to crack this format, but I think he submitted it in like 5 minutes. And we're like, that sounds pretty cool. Let's see how that kind of goes. But what have been your experiences with that particular format and the performances we've seen from the world's best surfers over the last couple of years?
I think something that kind of people, maybe unless you've been to the WSL finals, unless you've been on the beach at Lowers in this case, how fast that day moves and how fast that format moves through the day. And you get down there in the morning and that 4 seed and 5 seed are going up against it. And whether you're a surfer or a journalist covering it or a fan or whatever you are, it moves surprisingly fast. And I think that as surf fans, we get kind of used to watching events that take multiple days, 3 or 4 days at a time, and there's calls and stuff. But when the finals start and the first heat hits the water, it's like all gas all the way till you're crowned the champions. And it's a really interesting experience, and it's got to be really challenging for the surfers to have those kind of peaks and valleys of emotion throughout the day as you're kind of battling through round after round.
For sure. Like, we were so curious how it was going to go before that first year, because obviously we're like, well, the number 1 seed deserves like all the advantages possible. They'll be at the end of the road. It'll have to be 2 out of 3. They'll be rested. But then the counter argument is like, well, some of these people will build momentum throughout the field. Like, and you don't want to be caught flat-footed if you're that number 1 seed and someone's on a heater. But I think we've seen it mostly play out. Really, the only kind of major upset, right, was that year where Steph ran the table and took out Carissa. The rest have been all the number 1 seeds. But why don't we let's go through the matches this year? I want to get your predictions, and we'll see.
I was looking at it after Fiji ended. There's some good ones.
Prognosticate here. So Lower Trestles, it's a venue you're more than familiar with. First matchup is going to be women's seed 5, Tatiana Weston Webb, up against Molly Picklum. Both surfers have been to the finals before, I believe, unless I'm missing it on Molly. I could be a little hazy. But either way, Tatiana definitely has. What do you think about that one?
I think that's an interesting one. It's an interesting one to get into the day because you have a bit of that generational clash. In the magazine, the new issue of Surfer that just came out, we interviewed Katie in it, and she talks about Molly and her heat with Molly at Pipe to start the year, and just how much respect she has for Molly and her surfing and how talented she is. And then you've got somebody like Tati, who's Olympic silver medalist. She's got nerves of steel. She wants it. She's hungry. She's totally experienced. And so it's going to be super interesting. I'm going to give the nod, I think, to Molly, just because I'm on this I think this youth movement on the women's tour right now is game changing. And we're looking at a point in time that kind of reminds me of the early days of the Momentum generation, right, when all those guys were coming on tour. And it's like, you've got Aaron Brooks, who just won Fiji. You've got Katie, who won Rio before that. And I don't know, there's just so much good energy, and these girls are so fired up and so talented that it's cool to see. And it'll be really fun to see it play out at Lowers, I think.
Yeah. Mitch and I were talking about that last week, and, kind of the finger in the wind, like, model I had when I started was like, the generational performance shifts on the men's side 20 years ago felt like every 5 years, give or take. But on the women, it was a little longer. It felt like almost every 10 years. And then I just think all those names you listed, and like over the last decade, that platform that's been built, investment in quality waves, investment in prize money, it's attracted so much talent that you got the surfers on tour. You got your Katie Simmers and Caroline Marks and Brisa Hennessy's and Molly Picklums and a number of others that are pretty young. And then you have this group of as you point out, like Erin Brooks, Sierra Kerr, Bella Kenworthy, like it's the age disparity between them is really tight. So it's like, I feel like that rotational, generational kind of things actually, it's getting shorter and shorter on the women's side.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because you look at somebody like Caroline Marks, who's
right, yeah.
22 years old, Olympic gold medalist, world champion. And then you look at Erin and Katie and Bella and all of those young women. And it's a different style of surfing. Mm-hmm. It's a different approach. And it's pretty radical to think of it like just in that short period of a time, how much has progressed and moved forward, especially in the barrel riding and the waves of consequence. But even, totally. The air, look at what like Sierra Kerr's air game or Erin Brooks' air game, right? So yeah, it's really cool to see. And I have a 16-year-old daughter, so she's a year and a half or so younger than Katie. And it's like, I can kind of, oh my God, that's like my kid going out and doing that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You got a reference point. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Versus in the past, it was maybe kind of more just abstract, but now it's, and like Bella Kenworthy, I've been friends with the Kenworthy family forever. She was at my wedding when her mom was pregnant. So somebody was asking me about her the other day. It's like, oh yeah, I've known her whole life. She was,
literally her whole life. Yeah.
Yeah. Watched her learn to walk on the Gold Coast of Australia when we were there for an event with Carissa and stuff. So it is a really cool full circle moment. And the performances these young women are putting in is just, it's so inspiring. It's so rad.
Yeah. All right, let's move over to the men's. First match is going to be 2019 world champion Italo Ferreira. He is going to be facing the number 4 seed Ethan Ewing. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was interesting that both men's and women's 5th seed are Brazilian and 4th seed are Australian, but that's just weird
Hey, I like trends.
Anomaly thing. This is an interesting one. I don't know if Ethan has the sort of Ethan was on a different tear last year. He was like surfing out of his skin.
Yeah.
And not to say that by any stretch he's surfing bad. I think having, knowing Italo Ferreira, his relationship with Timmy Patterson, who's a San Clemente shaper, there may be a connection there, that there may be a comfort level. I know when Italo's in town, Timmy and his family take care of him, and there's a lot of camaraderie there. And sometimes in these kind of like high pressure situations, just something like that can just be enough of a factor to kind of push him over the edge. I think Italo's been on a bit more of a competitive tear over the last year. He got to take the Olympics off, so he may be a little more rested.
Right.
But yeah, I think Italo gets Ethan in the upset in that one. It's going to be my pick.
Interesting.
What about you? What are you taking?
Oh man, it's hard to prognosticate. Like, I guess going back to the women's side, like Tatiana came, in my opinion, for her, like relatively easy turn away from winning that first world title in 2021. Right. She goes up 1-0 against Carissa. She needs a score at the end of the heat. She gets a good right, like tags it a few times, needed like an extra half point or whatever she missed it out on. It's the easiest turn of the wave, and she just kind of got caught between two headspaces and fell on the last turn. If she sticks that turn, she wins the second heat, she wins the world title. And I think something that you and I have both seen being around the sport for as long as possible is a lot of times those runner-ups spend so much emotional energy getting close that they often don't repeat at the same level the year after. They kind of knock back a few spaces just because they're like, I'm gassed, it didn't work out. Like, it's a little bit of a bridesmaid hangover. So I think you've seen her this year kind of rebound from 2021 finally. And we'll see. Molly had an incredible start. Like, and then kind of got sleepy. And I know she's another surfer that's been candid about like, look, sometimes I get in my head and I can't surf. And it's like, it's amazing because she is such an amazing surfer. It's like, isn't this like
Yeah.
second nature for you? But she turned it on in Fiji. I have no idea who's going to win that first heat. I'm excited about it. The Italo call and the Ethan call, yeah, it's another hard one for me. Ethan last year obviously was surfing with a recently fractured back from Tahiti. And
Yeah.
as you said, he was surfing out of his skin. I think that first heat in the final match against Felipe is probably the best heat I've seen in 5 years. Like the best surfing, like
Yeah.
between the just pound for pound, like lowers was firing. They were amazing. I wonder if part of his ability last year and performance had to do with like, the wounded animal phenomenon, right? Where it's like,
Yeah, like there was adrenaline.
exactly.
Right?
And you're focused. You're like, I'm not screwing up, because I can't.
Right.
So that's tough. And the Italo one, like he's been in the finals a couple times before. I think your call out on the Timmy Patterson connection's the right one. Although I don't know if this story's been told, but I guess we could break it here. I remember being down there with Parsons and Pat in 2021. It was like a day or two before the final started. And I'm like, oh, that Italo looked good. And they're like, he just got a brand new quiver this morning. It's the day before the window started. And I'm like, what do you mean he got like a brand new quiver? And he's like, well, he came here a week ago and his boards were too light. So like Timmy doubled the weight on all the boards. And I'm like, and they're like, this is the first time he's ever surfed a board this heavy. And I'm like, the day before the finals, like that's nuts. Like, but it kind of worked. That swell was kind of heavier, but geez, I don't know. Like it's. I think it's such a pressurized format that it's hard to pick.
I think so too, and it is kind of. I mean, you've got 5 best surfers in the world, so part of it is what the waves are doing too, right? I mean, we've been pretty fortunate over the last few years to get some really good days for the finals. And if the swell direction or the interval or whatever favors the left, that could play into Italo's favor if they're those long rights that go all the way down into the bay, and you've got to do 1,000 carves on it. Advantage Ethan probably.
Totally. Well,
and
go on.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was just gonna say on the Timmy Patterson thing. Timmy's the kind of guy where he'll shape himself a board, he'll shape it in the afternoon, glass it, and then go ride it. By the sunset session. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we've seen that in the past with other surfers where you get sort of almost equipment confusion, right? Like Jordy Smith is one who went through a lot of surfboards,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And sometimes just finding that one board that feels right, there's a lot to be said for that. And then you just kind of have that faith in it. So it'll be interesting to see how the equipment side of things plays out.
Yeah. Well, I won't make you go through all the other matchups, but on the women's side, Brisa Hennessy is number 3 seed, Caroline Marks number 2 seed, and then Caitlin Simmers is the number 1 seed. On the men's side, Jack Robinson's the number 3 seed, Griffin Colapinto the number 2 seed, and John Florence the number 1 seed. Who, in your prediction, is going to be in that final matchup against Caitlin and John? And then who's going to take out the world title?
I think we get Caroline and Katie in the women's final. That's a tough one. Who wins that one? I don't know. I want to say Katie. She lives right down the road, but Caroline lives in town and has spent the last 10 years or whatever living
down the other
surfing.
road.
Yeah. So it's kind of a wash there. I think. You know what I think? I think what it comes down to on finals day is it's such a pressure-filled day, and like we said earlier, it moves so fast that knowing what to expect. This is going to be Katie. This is her first time, right? Was she in it last year?
No,
she made it last year.
Oh no, she was. Yeah. She was in it, but she got fifth. Right? Yeah, like she kind of didn't have a great performance. I think.
So I think a little bit more experience. You're looking at Caroline's coming off of a gold medal performance. She's won the world title. She's been here. She knows what to expect. She can really manage that pressure and adrenaline and anxiety and everything that comes with it. Perhaps in a little bit more mature way than Katie can, because she's a little bit younger and hasn't spent quite as much time in the spotlight.
Mm.
So, but then again, Katie's gnarly, and who knows, she could do something that just kind of blows your mind. I think at the end of the day, it probably is back-to-back world titles for Caroline. I'm going to say.
Yep.
How about you? I'm going to keep putting you on the spot.
No, you should. I don't think I have any influence over the results. So there's no compromise here. I think your analysis is dead on. I think Caroline's been there before. I think, I'll put it this way. I'm more concerned about Katie being challenged by Caroline than I am of John being challenged by anyone, just from a like a focused, mission assignment kind of here to do the job standpoint.
Yeah.
And I say that because any one of these 5 men or women could win the final, of course. I think if Caitlin Simmers wins, it's like they're trading 8s and 9s and it's a surf off, right? Yeah. I think if it's more than likely, I think if it's anything under that, then I think I'd give it to Caroline. Like, I just think if they're trading 6s or 7s and there's more tactics involved, I could see Caroline being really smart. And she did it last year, and with Luke Egan in her corner.
Yeah.
Although, Caitlin's got Tom Winokur, toss up, but
yeah, I think one of the points of differentiation may come down to Caroline's backhand on the rights.
Right.
I don't know if Caroline's backhand on the right it probably beats Katie's backhand on the left.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be a big factor in her title last year.
Sure. And really, even like canvas wise too, right? Like, unless like we have a really unique swell angle, like the canvas of going on your backhand on the right is going to be better than going on your backhand on the left, right?
Yeah. Well, and the way that she can draw off the bottom and then just go straight up into the pocket really lends itself to that. Like you said, the wave face on the right. It really, she can get into the pacing of it, and she can just go. And again, having Luke Egan, world class goofy footer himself, who knows a few things about hitting it on your backhand, pretty potent combo right there.
And he's won out at lowers too. I remember.
Yes, he has.
All right, what about on the men's side? What's your pick?
On the men's side, I think it's going to be. It's going to be tough to beat John in the final. I think Griff could potentially do it. I think Griff learned a bit from last year. He's obviously a year older and a year more mature. He went into the final last year feeling a lot of that like hometown crowd energy and really embraced that moment. Ultimately, maybe it was a bit of a distraction too. At the same time, whereas you look at somebody like Ethan Ewing and how like supremely focused he was on surfing and just going out and putting it on rail and doing his thing. I think those are lessons that Griffin will take. He's a smart guy. He's got a lot of smart people around him.
Yep.
I think if it comes down to, it kind of depends on the surf. Sure. If it's in that like kind of forward, shoulder to head high range, I really like Griffin's chances. I think he spent so much time out at lowers, and he's going to come in, after taking the win in Fiji. He's got that kind of energy behind him. If it's pumping swell and John's able to really like leverage the open faces of the rights, I think that advantage probably falls to him a little bit. But it's a tough one. They have kind of different styles, different approaches, John's got all that flow and so much style through his turns and kind of different approaches, different angles of attack with his turns, where Griff may be more explosive and kind of along the progressive line that you've seen at lowers for 30 years, right? Kind of falls into that same ilk of the Christian Fletchers and the Archies, and there's a little bit of that attitude and stuff in his surfing. Yeah. So, if it's head high and under, Griffin. If it's 6 feet and pumping like it was the first year, probably John. I mean, that's a full hedge of the bet, but
well informed nonetheless.
That's that as a writer, that's what we do. Don't write yourself into a box. How about you? What do you think about?
There's not much I disagree with you there. I think the only thing I'd add is that, I was talking about this recently too, is like, it's a little bit funny, like remembering when John qualified in 2011, and this has come up on the podcast before, and I'm like, this sounds insane for someone that was like getting magazine covers when they're a preteen, but like John's qualification in 2011, he qualified at the midway point when we did the mid-year rotation, was a little bit under the radar. Like he'd broken his back that year, like he was doing some free surfing stuff, the kind of the generalized perception on him is like, oh, that's like the barrel kid and like can do airs every now and then. And when he qualified, like the log line from all the pundits were like, oh, I hope he survives long enough to get barreled on tour. Like that was it, and you compare that with someone like Kolohe Andino, who was being so hyped and so marketed by, Nike and Red Bull and the media at the time that like anything less than a world title his rookie year would have been a failure, and so like John kind of does have a history of being as under the radar as possible. And I know he's spent like quite a lot of time at lowers over the last couple of years when he can, dialing in his equipment. So I think that I agree. Any one of these people can win both men's and women's world title. I'd say that it does depend on the waves on the day. I think that if you look at the men's field in particular, like whether Ethan or Italo wins that opening match, all these guys are so good. They're kind of going to have to unload their entire clip in each match just to get to the next one. And I wonder if by the time they get to John, there's not only the physical fatigue, but maybe the subjective scoring fatigue of like, oh, I've seen that for 3 heats. And right. John, even in sort of like civilian surf, right, like has an interesting point of difference, whether it's power, whether it's rail game, etc. So I guess I'd give him the edge. And I just think the season he's had too, I think he's earned it. Like I really hope he gets his 3rd world title because he's not only a good person, but he's just a fantastic surfer and he's had a really good season.
Yeah. No, he's a great human all the way around. But it brings up something you mentioned earlier too about building momentum, right? Is that, if Griff has that heat against the number 3 or whoever he faces, right? He's got an extra heat to kind of just get his feet in the wax, kind of feel things out. And I think like what we saw with Carissa Carissa the year before when Steph went on that tear, Steph was like a freight train running down the tracks. Like you weren't going to stop that momentum. And for Carissa to come in just like cold and have to like build to that moment. I mean, surfing is such a rhythmic thing, right? And the surfer that's in rhythm is the one who's likely going to get themselves on the waves and get themselves the scores. And like Steph that day, her first heat was kind of shaky, if I remember right.
It was against, I want to say it was against Brisa or someone.
I think it was against Brisa, and it was kind of like, I don't know. And then it was like every heat, she just kept like getting gnarlier and gnarlier. Right. And so by the time she got Carissa, it was like she was already flying down the tracks, and Carissa could just try and hope to keep up, even with all the talent that Carissa has,
Of course, yeah. I think this format in particular, we've talked about on the podcast before, and you know her so well, and she's such an incredible surfer, but I think this format in particular, if I'm in Carissa's camp, I'm almost like, do not be the number 1 seed. Like this format is designed to play on, some of your like competitive and psychological weaknesses. If you're standing at the end of this, format and you're having to think about your competitor coming through these heats. And I mean, we've joked about that before. We're like, it's like you can make an argument that you want to be the number 2 surfer if you don't want to worry about that number 1 spot. It's like, well, you get that warm up heat before the best 2 out of 3 match for the world title, and you don't have the pressure of having that number 1 spot.
Yeah. And then, you just come in with a little, and I think it's hard if you've been there all day and you've been watching things, right? Like the day moves fast unless you're the number 1 seed, and then you're like, when do I surf? Like, let's, and so there's that whole part too, the the longer you're waiting around, watching things, your nervous system is firing, and there's like kind of, I don't know, your body and your mind and your everything kind of have to go through highs and lows throughout the day, and it's got to be hard to stay up like at that peak level ready to go when you've been sitting there for 3 or 4 hours.
For sure. What's the tell me now, what's the Surfer Magazine headline the day after the finals runs?
California sweep, Katie Griff take the world title. I'm going all
It writes itself.
It writes well, I think something that's like kind of been lost a little bit this year is really the performance of American and Hawaiian surfers. And that so much was made of the Brazilian Storm.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And now you've got John number 1 and Griff number 2. You've got Katie number 1 and Caroline number 2. And I don't know, maybe we just don't talk about it as much, but it definitely, I remember it wasn't that long ago. I'm sure we could figure it out, but it wasn't that long ago where it was like, there wasn't a lot of American representation on tour,
right.
And there certainly wasn't, has there ever been a time where there's been a Californian, or an American and a Hawaiian in first and second on both the men's and the women's title?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
Well, I wonder too, like, because you were around, like, it felt like you would get these groups of talent from countries, like the Coolie Kids, right? It's like, well, yeah, that's a group. And then the Brazilian Storm. And even in those years, like the Americans that were successful were kind of like iconoclastic and loners almost. Like Kelly, like yes, he's an American, but like who's he? Like what countryman is he like traveling? Like Dane, yeah, exactly. Dane Reynolds is like, you're like, okay, well, like he's not like on the beach doing sit-ups with the Gudauskas, bro. You know what I mean? Like, but I feel like the success of the Brazilian Storm over the last decade, it has created like a group support mechanism in all these other spaces, like the 2% crew, et cetera. And I do think that's fueling quite a lot of success on tour right now.
Yeah. And I look at it from like what's happened in San Clemente and being here for so many years and seeing, the Gudauskas generation, Gudauskas, Nate Yeomans, you put Greg Long, Mike Lostness, there's a whole crew that you could put in that, and they kind of knock this door down, but they do it in a really positive, encouraging way. Right. And then Kolohe comes along and starts showing these kids what it's like to be out on the world stage and compete and stuff like that. And Griff's like a direct disciple almost of Kolohe. He's just a few years younger, but like, they grew up surfing against each other and are friends. And now you look at like the kids that are in the water today, the 12 and 13 year olds in the water, and the talent pool is so deep because you've had these generations on generations, that keep supporting it. And then you also have this infrastructure. You have a great wave like Lowers where kids can train and practice and get better. You have incredible surfboard builders like Matt Biolas and Timmy Patterson and the list goes on and on. So you have this like kind of like perfect storm in San Clemente where like the kids that are coming, like the Katies and the Bella Kenworthys and stuff, are kind of the tip of the spear. There's a whole crew of young girls coming up behind them. Like look at think of like a girl like Eden Walla, who's just on fire right now. And you're going to see her in that conversation in a few years. And there's a whole bunch of others like her. So it's kind of a cool feeder system, and it's cool to see the American surfing and California surfing at such a high level right now around the world.
Totally. Well, the Lexus WSL Finals, it's going to be at Lower Trussels from September 6th through the 14th. It's a one-day event, so we'll find the best day within that window. Are you going to be down there for it, watching on the beach, or are you going to enjoy it from the webcast?
I'll be on the beach if I can find a parking spot. That's the whole secret to the WSL Finals. It's like get there at 4 a.m. and find a parking spot because
It can be tough. Well, I mean, the other thing too, it's almost sometimes like, I love being there on the beach too, but sometimes it's nice being in the air conditioned couch and just watching all the angles on the broadcast. A little bit like football, where it's like, I'm not getting these angles if I'm in the stadium. It's pretty good.
100%. Well, and also for coverage,
yes,
right?
Of course, yeah.
Like when you're covering an event, it's if you're on the beach, you're more than likely going to get distracted talking to the dude next to you and miss the wave that you've been waiting. And there's no like jumbotron to watch the replay, and you hope you hear the score from the announcer. So yeah, I found over the years, well, like it's, there's a lot of advantages to covering an event live on the scene in terms of like getting the coverage up and out quickly. We used to say when I was working with the league, was a good internet connection and a comfortable chair is
right. Yes.
paramount.
It's a little sad, but that's where we're at. But that's actually a perfect segue. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to dive into the background of Jake Howard and, your life as a media man. We'll be right back.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, we're back. This is The Lineup. I'm Dave Prodan here with Surfer Magazine's editor-in-chief, Jake Howard. Jake, like so many of our listeners, and this is something I wondered when I was a kid too, and the media landscape's changed so much in a very short window, but they want to know, like, well, how do I get a job in surfing? What if I want to write stories? What if I want to work at Surfer Magazine? Like, what if I want to do X, Y, and Z? And I always tell people there's versions of advice I give them that are similar, but I also kind of caveat that, like, look, like I doubt anyone's path in the surfing world is replicable. You know what I mean? Like there's all these unique sets of circumstances that have to form, and timing and good luck and bad luck in some cases that get you to where you end up being. But let's talk about where you came from, Jake. Like, where were you born? What was family life like? Mom, dad? Like, what other sports did you play? What was your upbringing like? I
was born in San Diego. My mom was working at SeaWorld. SeaWorld in 1976 must have been quite a spot.
I bet.
And but my family was from the Bay Area in San Francisco. So when I was little, we moved back up to a little beach town called Pacifica, just south of San Francisco. And that's where I learned to surf when I was in elementary school. We'd go down to Half Moon Bay. It was right by Half Moon Bay. And we'd go down to Half Moon Bay, and there's this little wave, the jetty wave called Princeton, the Princeton Jetty. And it was out the back was Mavericks, but this was in early 80s that I was surfing there. So all the while you're on your boogie board, you're learning to surf, and there's like little 2-foot kind of rebound wave off the jetty in Half Moon Bay, and then a mile out to sea is Mavericks, unbeknownst to everybody,
right.
Which is kind of crazy. So I spent my high school years surfing up in Northern California, north of San Francisco mostly. In college, I played water polo, and that's actually how I ended up oddly getting into surf riding. Is I was finishing college. I was actually going to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and had a girlfriend, and I followed her out to Seal Beach in Orange County. And I got a job lifeguarding in the summers. And it just so happened. So my plan was I was going to be an English teacher. I was going to coach water polo and then lifeguard in the summer. Figured like, it's not a bad gig, No,
that's pretty well thought out.
It still plays. If this thing doesn't work out, I may change horses mid-stride. But I ended up living close to Sean Collins, and Sean from Surfline. Sean had started Surfline basically from the Seal Beach lifeguard headquarters, where he was doing the surf report for the lifeguard department. And so this is in the late 90s, 97, 98. And Sean offered me a job doing morning surf reports for Surfline and recording. This is when we were still in the era of the wave fax, right, and then also recording the surf report for 976 Surf. So I'd get up in the morning and I'd drive down to the office in Huntington, and I would wait for all these folks from up and down the coast, like Bird in San Diego would call in and he'd give you hey, it's it's 3 feet south wind at Ocean Beach right now. Tide's coming up. Should be blah, 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 you know. And so I'd write down those, and all these reporters would call in from payphones up and down the coast, and then I'd aggregate the surf report, and then I would put it online, and then also record the, you know, good morning, this is Jake with your Orange County surf report. And that was kind of the like start of it all. And I never really looked back. I got a internship working at Surfer Magazine after that for Ross Garrett, who now Ross is the CEO of Surfline. And it's just a funny, small little sandbox that we all get to keep doing this and bumping into each other. And yeah, I spent from about 2000 till my daughter was born, 2008, I spent working at Surfer, and then went on to launch Red Bull Surfing, and then ran a whole surf section for ESPN for a while. Spent some time working with the good folks at the Surfers Journal. I actually, when I was living in Seal Beach, I'd written a pitch. I pitched a story to the Surfers Journal. I was probably 23 or 24. Back to your point of like, how do you get here? How do you create a career in this world? So I wrote a pitch and sent it to the Journal, and Steve Pesman wrote me the nicest rejection letter ever. It was like 3 pages long, handwritten, and like the sweetest, most thoughtful no you could ever hear, you know?
Do you still have the letter?
I do. And like, like 10 years after that, I ended up working for him, and I brought the letter in, and I'm like, hey, Pez, you know, laid it down on the table. And, what those folks do is just so near and dear to my heart. It's such a special place. And what Steve and Debbie have created is just, is magical. So yeah, then kind of bounced around, got to work for the Surf League for a few years. And then I've been back at Surfer 25 years later. I'm back at Surfer where I started. So yeah, who knows how you get to where you're going. It just kind of happens sometimes.
Well, that's a good point too. Like, and I think that we touched on it. Like, I don't know. I think like the surf, the public discourse around surfing every day, like it relates to the surfing world writ largely. And I think if you go back 20 years ago, it was a simpler time, you know, in the world, but it was a simpler surfing world too. You know, there was kind of more even unspoken consensus of gravity happening in surfing. You know, I always use like the Andy Irons example of like, I grew up, I was like an Andy Irons guy. Like, I didn't care if, you know, he had the best part in Campaign 2 or he was kicking Kelly's ass in Japan. Like, it was all the same thing, you know? And I'm like, yeah, Andy's my favorite surfer. And I think what you've seen over the last 2 decades is like the stratification of attention everywhere, of course, but certainly in surfing. And that's obviously impacted the media in the sense of like, it's not like 3 magazines you need to pay attention to anymore. It's not even just kind of 2 websites. It's like there's all these social media things, there's all these podcast things, there's all these other things. And so for someone like you that cares about this in his bones, and someone like you who's such a good storyteller, it feels like you had no other choice but to be really flexible in where you were able to kind of ply your trade as the actual ecosystem within surf storytelling was changing so much.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Because it's been this like constant state of evolution, right? Like the first time I was at Surfer in the early 2000s, I remember Grant Ellis coming in and we're going to run the first digital photo on the cover. And that was like, no way, you can't run a digital.
You've crossed the line. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was unheard of. Like when I started, I would travel with photographers and like carry their film home with them instead, and big Ziploc bags of film, and don't put the film through the X-ray machine and all of this. Right. And then it comes to like, oh, we're running a digital photo on the cover, and then digital photography changes surfing pretty quickly. Right. Because you have like, if you think about like what a photographer like Jeff Devine or Art Brewer were doing at like, talk to Devine, he'll tell you about shooting sunset in the 70s, and he'd be out there on his little mat shooting from the channel, and you get 36 shots. That's what you get. And you got to make each one of those shots count, and then you got to come in, dry everything off, change the film, go back out, and take 36 more. digital photography, all of a sudden now you've got thousands of you can just hold the trigger down and you're probably going to get a frame. So that starts to change things. And then
Totally.
then websites come along and there's more, more and more people are served digital content. And then the game changer really is social media, where now the editors or the people, the gatekeepers or the key holders for surf magazines, all of a sudden that barrier is gone, and anybody who has a phone and a camera can post that they can be their own surf star and they can create their own audience. And now professional surfers don't need the magazines to promote them as much, or the brands don't need it as much. So you have this, like, every time from a digital photography to websites to social media, it's like this ongoing change. And you really, to be in media today, you really have to continuously evolve. There is no how many decades was like newspapers, right?
Sure,
you would just get newspapers and that's where you would get your news. And like Surfer or the Surfing or these other surf magazines, since Surfer began in 1960, that was primarily how like a core surf audience would get its news and information. You would wait every month to see who won the contest. If you didn't know somebody that could give that to you, or where the latest scores were or swells, you didn't have like real-time swell reports or any of that, right? So I remember as a kid like looking in the back of the newspaper at the like weather section, and you're like, well, it looks like there's like a low pressure thing up in Alaska, and that, I think that means we're going to get some waves, or buoy readings in the newspaper or something like that. And so to continue to stay relevant, you have to continue to evolve with what platforms are out there. But I think universally good storytelling is still good storytelling, right? And the stories that move us, the stories that inspire us, still have the same qualities as they did 25 or 50 years ago,
Totally. Your gatekeeper comment's something I've spent a ton of time thinking about, because when I was younger, like I loved reading, Sean Doherty or Nick Carroll or, Steve Hawke or whoever it was, Evan Slater, yourself. I loved reading them because they were informed and they were educated and they were experienced, and their opinion, it really like wasn't just giving me a deep insight into whatever they're talking about, but it always seemed to create a window into a perspective broadening thing as well, like, which I really appreciated. And I'm not saying it was all perfect. I certainly don't want to do too much to revere all those people, because gatekeeping is certainly problematic. But then we've gone through this period over the last couple of decades where that's all gone away mostly, and everyone with a phone is a reporter, and the surfers themselves are their own media companies. And it just feels like the environment over the last few years has been so ripe with often, misinformation, but sometimes like intentional disinformation. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm spending my time trying to digest content and get information that hopefully is real or is like put in the right context. And it feels like the market is crying for a recalibration, not to what we had before, but to a place where there are experienced voices that you can trust to go, look, this information came in, here's what we saw, and here's our take on it, and you can take that or leave it. But it feels like that's why people are so excited that you're at the helm of Surfer, and that's why the actual print magazine's coming back too. It's like, here are stories of substance, which is really stark compared to everything else that's out there.
Yeah, and I think on the gatekeeping thing, being an editor is sort of that, right? You have to make these decisions of like, yes, we're going to run this story. No, we're not going to run this story, or we're going to frame things this. You're always making these decisions. What I try to think about is that you really want to be a conduit for what's happening out there. A good editor is, it's like the assist guy, right? They're not the ones like getting the dunk,
right? Yeah,
and getting like the highlight clip. They're the ones that have just kicked the ball off to the star, and the star gets to dunk it. And I think that like to what I am excited about with Surfer, and one of the things I really want to push for is just have a platform where where people can share different opinions and share different mindsets or different beliefs or whatever in a very articulate way. And so you provide, like, if you look at the magazine, it's, Kelly has a 2,000 word piece in it. Carissa wrote a
Right.
beautiful piece in it about her experience. And that's facilitating, right? That's like reaching out to Carissa and saying, hey, do you want to, I've got some space in the mag. You want to write something? And she's like, yes, like I'm in. And then together we work on it. We went through multiple drafts and we had a lot of back and forth on it. And hopefully at the end of the process, she's really proud of what she wrote, and it represents, what's in her heart and her mind. And I think that that's something, in a world where there's a lot of, social media, you see a lot of self-promotion, right? Like,
Sure,
I don't care what you had for dinner, and I don't,
right, yeah.
But there's this kind of like third-party validation thing, right? Like if you have, an editorial piece, whatever editorial platform it is, Surfer or whatever, but an editorial piece is going to carry some more weight or different weight because it's not just you saying it, right? It's somebody that's like, you've gotten to this place where you can publish this stuff, and it's gone through the editorial process. I think every story is better as it's gone through the editorial process and the rigor. I think you can't be emotionally connected to anything you write because it can always be made better. And then the other thing that I really sort of saw that was missing is just old straight journalism 101, like pick up the phone and get a phone call, make a phone call and get a quote, and talk to people. And I think we get siloed off, right? In social media, you're like, well, this is what I think. And this is what I'm going to post about. This is what I'm going to write about. And there's a lot to be said, I think, for, call the surfboard shaper, call the surfer that was involved in something, and just do the due diligence, do the fact checking. And, we're as surf media, and I thought a lot about this, we're in a very fortunate place where we're not dealing with issues of national security or, presidential politics or anything like that. We're in a place where we largely get to pick the stories we write about, and surfing should be a positive. We all started because there's nothing more fun or cooler to do than go surf with your friends. So that should be sort of represented online with the content. You see that same stoke, that same positivity and kind of infectious, like, inspiration, and taking kind of some of the cynicism and kind of egg vibes out of it a little bit. And I think just by picking up a phone call and calling people, you can do that, right? And just getting perspectives, because it is about sharing different perspectives. Like, we can look at surfboard design, right? We could have infinite conversations about, do you have channel bottoms when it's windy or not channel bottoms when it's windy, right? Do you put a little stabilizer fin in your twin fin, or is that cheating? Like, there's a million ethical surfboard questions we could ask ourselves. And the more those voices are elevated and those voices are brought to the forefront, the more interesting our world becomes. And surfing's infinitely interesting. So just picking up the phone and talking to somebody or supporting a kid. Think of, like, if you're a Grom today, how do you get any shine from a media organization?
Right. Yeah.
How do you show a sponsor that you're climbing the ladder? Surfer used to do the Hot 100, and it gave the kids a platform to at least be seen a little bit. And there's always going to be some kids that are really good and kind of defy that. But, like, again, living in San Clemente where there's 200 really good kids, maybe not that, but there's a lot. And what's the path for those kids? What's their path forward? So in 10 years, those kids that saw the Olympics this year, that are going to watch the WSL finals this year, and they're 8 years old, 10 years old, and are like completely captivated by it. How do you create a path forward for them? You know,
Yeah. Those junior lists, they used to hit more than not too back in the day. I remember I did a couple of like junior power rankings when Lewis Samuels was doing his
yeah,
CT power rankings for Surfline, and I looked back on one the other year and I'm like, man, I was pretty good. Like I got like I nailed some of these picks. Like, the other thing
yeah,
that you said that I thought was really interesting is like it's just sort of we are very fortunate we get to work in surfing. It is endlessly inspiring to me anyway, but I think to most people. And as you point out, yeah, we could be hunting terrorists. We could be doing like anything else that's like pretty serious. And that always strikes me as interesting when you do get some of the cynics, you do get some of the commentary. I'm all for as much feedback as possible. The thing that always trips me out though is the anonymous handles from people who like
yeah.
want to comment or critique. And again, like, hey, these aren't state secrets. Like Jake's putting his name on his perspective. I'm putting my name out there. Like what, like
Yeah.
if we're going to have a conversation, like let's be on equal footing. I've never understood the pseudonyms the pen names in surfing. I just don't get it.
Well, yeah. And if I always think if you're going to say something, say it, you know?
Yeah, of course.
And,
say it with your chest, man.
And own it, you know? Like, yeah. I mean, we've all got our opinions and we're all entitled to them. And if you can articulate it in a way that's well thought out and meaningful, then like go for it, put your name on it. But if you can't put your name on it, then, you know,
yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe you don't have much business saying it.
I just think the conversations are so much more interesting, right? Like where it's like, oh, cool, there's two people. I want to listen to that conversation if these two people like violently disagree on like, but if I just want to know who they are, right? You know, the other thing I really liked that you said is as an editor, you're not looking to make the highlight reel yourself. You're looking to set that person up. And like I remember when I was a young writer, and I think we all kind of go through this phase of like, oh yeah, Hunter S. Thompson. Like I'm going to make the story about me. And I think we all kind of flirt with it, some of us for a little bit too long, but for me I was like, no, I became a writer or a storyteller or a communicator of what these people are doing, you know? And I think that phenomenon's kind of been exacerbated, as you pointed out, like in the social media age where everyone's like, here's what I'm doing. And it's like, I want to know what your subject's doing kind of thing. Like,
totally.
So I like the way you put that on the assist side as far as an editor is concerned.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's not about me, right? Like my mediocre surf skills and aging body are not going to like, it's not the most awesome thing to write about, but we're in a really fortunate position where we have relationships with people, we have friendships with people, we have access to people that are interesting and are doing interesting things and have interesting thoughts and perspectives on things, and we can help facilitate that. And what a cool opportunity that is to help somebody, you know, elevate what they're thinking or what they're working on. And I always think of like I got to spend a little time working with John Rose at Waves for Water, and their whole tagline was do what you love and help along the way. And it was like, that's such a cool way such a cool philosophy, you know. It's a cool way to frame up anything you're doing in life, you know, to just stay passionate about what you're doing and love it. And we're so lucky to have such this diverse, weird surf world that's just full of all kinds of characters that are, some are really serious, some are totally cosmic and out there. And the sum of our parts make it all interesting. If it was all the same, it would get boring, you know?
No, I agree with that. Well, the question on everyone's mind, including my son's, is that after the success of releasing, I don't know, tell me, how long was it between print issues that Surfer?
It was almost 5 years.
5 years.
They stopped printing in 2020. That was kind of the dark times.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I was messaging with you the other day, and like my son is like, won't put it down. It's like his first like Surfer magazine. And, you know, he's coming up to me and he's like, hey, Dad, he's like, have you met Art Brewer? And I'm like, no, I haven't. You know, like every other day he's like, ask me a question about something that's in there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned like how excited like some of these voices, almost in like a Players Tribune kind of way, are. Like Carissa Moore wants to write there, Kelly Slater wants to write there.
Yeah.
Is there going to be another print issue of Surfer coming out soon, and what can readers expect?
Yeah. This was, let's get one up and out and see what people think, see if people are still interested in it. It's, 5 years is a long time since making magazines. And I could convince myself that people are going to love this. Of course we wanted to just kind of test the water. So plans for 2025, this will be the only one this year. And then we'll ramp things up more in 2025. Now that it's been, the feedback, the reception has blown my mind how excited people are. And I don't know if it's just that like Surfer Magazine is back, or like, like a kid, if it's like, it's got something to hold and flip through it. And I was talking to somebody last week about, you can't like tear the pages out of Instagram and put them on your wall,
right. Yeah.
And then thinking that it's like, it reminds me a little bit of sort of the resurgence of vinyl record collections, and just this, like, you have this thing, you can have kind of a tactile experience with it. You can hold it in your hands, you can put it down and come back to it. You process the information differently, right? If you put a record on, you kind of sit and listen to the record, and all the crackles in it and all of that is all part of that experience. And sitting with a magazine and flipping through the pages, you may start by looking through at the photos, you come back, read some captions, maybe you read a story or two here and there. And over time you consume it. And it's not something that you just like have scrolled through and then you're done and you walk away from it. So it's, just having something to hold. It's been amazing to see how psyched people are, and to have like Kelly sharing the cover on his Instagram and stuff like that. We really, knew that the timing of this was going to be coming out right around Fiji, when Kelly was wrapping things up in Fiji, and really wanted to just give a nod to the man and celebrate everything he's accomplished. He told a really interesting story when we were talking about seeing his name in the back of the magazine when he was a kid, and he had gotten second place in an ESA contest in Central Florida, and then he's like, and then then I wanted to get a photo in it, and then I wanted to get an ad and get the cover. And, who knows? Like, I mean, Kelly was going to be Kelly, but little things like that mean a lot to people. And so when we were kind of coming up with the concept of the issue, it just made a lot of sense to throw the man on page one.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're getting at too is like there's so much more value associated, because there's actual like financial investment value. Like, you're deciding to put this person in the magazine, you're printing the magazine out. People are spending time to put it together. People are spending time to flip through it. And you compare that to like, digital media and social media, which is like considerably more disposable, right? Where it's like, oh, if I don't like that photo, I'll just take another one, kind of thing. And such an interesting moment, right? Having Kelly on the cover of Surfer Magazine, using his Instagram account, which is followed by quite a few people, which is social media, which in a large way disrupted print media, but he's using like a very disposable version of media to actually elevate and revere something that's a lot more permanent. Like, it's a very interesting kind of media studies example.
Yeah. And I guess that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is like media is evolved, and it's a lot of different things all at once. You can have a print magazine, you can have a social media thing, you have a website, all kinds of different, a YouTube channel, whatever. And there's ways and places for all of it. You just kind of have to make sure that it's all working in concert together. Otherwise it starts looking kind of funky.
I love it. Well, this was awesome, man. I cannot wait for
the
next issue to come out. Oh, absolutely. And we're going to take one more quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we will do listener questions and the lightning round. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. This is the lineup. I am Dave Prodan here with the one and only Jake Howard, the Surfer Magazine editor-in-chief. Jake, this is the first time you've been on the lineup. It's certainly not going to be the last. I'm going to try to lure you back once a month if I can. But before you go, I'd love to get you to answer some questions that the Instagram community at the Lineup Pod had put out for you. First question is from @FisherBalfi, who asks, what is your personal favorite cover ever of Surfer Magazine, I'm assuming?
Oh, personal favorite cover ever of Surfer? I'd have to go either with, what year was it? It's the Sean Collins photo out the tent window from, as a good editor, I should know this.
I'm impressed you got one. Like, I mean,
it's a Sean Collins photo from Aubrey Ojos, late 70s. It's a lineup shot outside of an orange. He's in this tent, and it was like, that's what I want to go do. Like, that was totally. Like, I want to go surf, find waves like that, and just hang out in tent, like full feral, just surf guy. So that cover especially, the cover, the Millennium Wave of Larrett's is, as far as like impact and game changingness.
Yeah,
that's a hard cover to top. I mean, that's got to be right there with one of the best covers. Jay Moriarty at Mavericks, the Iron Cross cover. See, now I'm getting warmed up, and now you're not going to stop me. But I think the Jay Moriarty cover was pretty radical, where he's just fully getting flogged. So yeah,
I like him. Those like that Sean Collins example is a good one. You know, I think for me, I think for so many surfers, like, you know, the Craig Peterson, Kevin Naughton shots is like, especially, I mean, I'm sure it's all circumstantial. Like, I grew up in suburbia, so I was like, anything I can do to run away and join the circus was interesting, you know? And I'm like, it was just like a window into like, well, you could do that. You could be there doing that. Like that blows my mind, you know? Like, I can't believe that.
70s surf travel? Get out of here. When everything was just wide open and the world was still just, you could figure it out as you went along. And that people did that, right? Like, again, you know, I grew up in a relatively suburban home, and the idea that you could just like bugger off and like throw all your responsibilities out the window and just go like find enough money to get a plane ticket or get on a boat and go somewhere. Like,
it's amazing.
Sign me up.
Yeah. I mean, Jerry Lopez and Peter McCabe were on like a couple weeks ago, and it was just like, these are two of the best surfers of their generation. These are the, you know, like, this is the John and Griffin Colapinto of their generation. And they were just like, you know what we did? Instead of like sought after the limelight, we just went and hid out in Indonesia and discovered all these waves and surfed G-Land by ourselves. And I'm like, that's amazing, man.
We went surfing, and that dream is still there. I think the romance and the attraction of surf adventure, barefoot surf adventure, still really drives most of why we do what we do. Even if you don't get to go on a surf trip except for once a year or whatever, it's like, it's always in the back of your head. Like,
even scoring like an empty or relatively empty special session at your local, you know, it's just like, these are like cannot be replicated by pharmaceutical abuse, cannot be bought kind of thought. You know what I mean? It's just like,
totally.
Like, I mean, that'll forever be the case. Like, it's awesome. So great answer. Second question is from @TreeHatJ, who asks, was a big question. What are the 3 most significant events in surf history that shaped our sport? I'll leave that one with you.
That's how long do we got? My phone's going to die. But,
how about 3 major ones? And that'd be the 3 most.
3 major ones. How about 3 major ones that happened while I was alive? Maybe.
Yeah, let's do that.
I look at the passing of Andy Irons as something that really shaped surfing. There was the world pre-Andy and the world after Andy, and Andy's passing also sort of coincided with this economic decline around the world, this global slump. And it was kind of like when Andy died, it was the day the music died, and surfing changed in ways that it wasn't just a world champion. It wasn't just a star that we lost. It was, I don't know. It almost feels like it took 10 years for that like dark curtain to that hangs over us to kind of pass a little bit. On a more uplifting note, I think that we'll look back at what we just saw in the Olympics as this isn't a necessarily historic event yet, but it will be. I think you're going to see people that saw, especially that big day at Chopu, that really west swell day. I think there's 10-year-old, 12-year-old kids that were watching that in places that don't have waves. And someday you're going to see some kid at the WSL finals or whatever, and they're going to say, yeah, I watched the Olympics in 2024. And that's why I'm here today. And then if I'm going to go way back, jump in the way back time machine, I'll go with the toss up between the swell of 69.
You weren't alive in 69. Come on.
Feeling alive. No, I'm going in the way back machine now. Here,
okay, got it. All right.
I ran out of contemporary idea. I went so far forward that I had to go back.
I got you.
But that swell of 69, when like big wave surfing becomes big wave surfing, kind of at that moment, right? People have been challenging big waves, but that's the legend of Greg Knoll and Makaha. And it's just this like, I don't know, you don't have like any other things. It's the swell of 69. And there's no other like the swell of, 2011. I mean, there's the Code Red swells and there's El Nino winters and stuff like that. But that one swell event just kind of has stood the test of time, and runner up to all this probably put the shortboard revolution in there, and starting probably with the world contest in San Diego when Nat Young won that one. And it kind of, even though Nat was on a long, like what you'd consider a longboard at the time, and Jerry and Dick Brewer and Bob McTavish and all these people there's a lot of competing ideas about how this thing all came to be, but by the end of 68, 69, shortboards are starting to usurp traditional longboards, and surfing changes ever forward from there. Yeah. I think could probably find some more, but I'm gonna stop while I'm ahead at 4.
Oh, those are good ones. Those are all good ones. I don't disagree with any of them. I'd sprinkle in, and I'll come at it from, I guess, a recent history lenses. I think Gabriel Medina's first world title, 2014. I think that made a big impact. Wasn't the first South American to win the world title. That was Sofia Milanovic for sure, who deserves all her flowers. But I think the Gabriel thing really changed the trajectory of sport out of Brazil. I'd add the same kind of attention to like Steph Gilmore and her arrival on the scene. I think she really thrust women's surfing up several levels, and still is. And then just because I'm a homer, I think everything that Dane Reynolds did, from approach to presentation to Marine Layer Productions to Chapter 11, I think that shifted the sport quite a bit. But I like that question. You and I could probably spend a whole podcast.
That's a good one. And I'll add to your Dane Reynolds, I'll add Tom Curran to that. And
my God, of course, yeah.
I'm going to add the release of Searching for Tom Curran. Because there's probably a lot of like mid-40s dudes like me who are like, that's my jam. Searching for Tom Curran.
We should do a whole podcast on this question, but we should segment it into like 3 most significant films, 3 most significant, swells, competitive performance. Maybe we can come up with like shaping designs. We'll put that one in the way forward machine, you and I.
Yeah, listicles.
I like it. Last question that we've pulled, at least from at the Lineup Pod on Instagram, is from @2cool for Megan, who asks, "What gets you in the best state of mind for writing?" I love this question.
What gets me in the best state of mind for writing is probably when everything else is organized and I can just sit down and focus on that. if that makes any sense. Like
yeah, of course.
and maybe that's the like procrastinator in me, but like dishes in the sink are done.
Oh man,
Desk is clean.
Yeah.
Like email inbox is like updated, and then I can sit down and really write. It depends on what I'm writing. I can bang things out pretty quick, but like if I'm going to sit down and put some thought to it, put some music on, feet up. Rainy days, like I love a good stormy rainy day and writing. And like a rainy day with an empty house that's clean. I'm all in. Because anything to distract me, that's the key, right? It's like, oh, I noticed that there's a spider web over here in the corner. I should probably get that. And it's an excuse just to get up and break concentration, and usually when I sit down to write, it's I can sit down for a couple hours and kind of churn things out. So eliminating reasons for me to be distracted makes a lot of sense, and then doing all your homework, right? If you have all the pieces and the research, it's really nice to sit down if you've done your interviews and you've got all your research, and then it's like it's like a jigsaw puzzle and you're just putting the pieces together and kind of threading things together and finding, interesting ways to turn the phrase and stuff when you're always interrupted by transcribing an interview or trying to go online and search. Like I've read things and stuff about writers that they have computers that they don't even like have a modem in or anything, so they can get online. Because once you take yourself sort of out of that space, it definitely it changes. And I was listening to the podcast with Rick Rubin. I thought it was really interesting. What he said is that the song that you record one day isn't the same song that you record the next day, and it's capturing whatever's in your mind that day, whatever is in your soul or heart or whatever comes bubbling out of your fingers. You may write that story differently the next day, right? And you probably will, or you may you may come at it from a completely different angle because your day has changed the way that you process things. So I think there's a lot to be said for getting it out when it feels right. Like I struggle with when I've had copywriting jobs and they want to charge you by hour. Or they want you to invoice by hour. And I wrote a tagline for Roxy years ago: "Make waves, move mountains." And I don't know, what is that, 5 words or something like that? It didn't take a whole long
right.
And it just kind of comes to you. And I was probably walking the dog or something, and it was like, oh, I got it. And you write it down, and you're like, that's it, I got it. And how many songs were like
47 hours. Yeah. Right.
Like
what are you supposed to say? Right.
I mean, Willie Nelson wrote all his songs riding in the back of a limousine between shows and stuff. So like when it's ready to come out, you have to be willing to like, just kind of let it come out, but don't force it. Right. Cause there's times you'll sit in front of your computer and you're like, I need to write something. And it's like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to write. And then whatever you do write will turn out not so great. So
that's a great
just
answer.
being open to it coming to you, which means doing all the dishes and dusting and all this weird idiosyncratic writer things. That's why we're always by ourselves.
That's right. It's a lonely existence. But hey, great question, great answer, and thanks to everyone who wrote in questions at the Lineup Pod. If we didn't get to yours, we will work on it in the DM. So thank you. Mr. Howard, we're now down to the final segment of the podcast. This is the lightning round. So these are 10 questions for you to answer as quickly as you can.
All right, let's do it.
If you could only have one board set up for the rest of your life, single fin, twin fin, thruster, quad bonzer, or finless, which would you choose?
Twin fin, no question.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Burrito or pizza?
Burrito. Pedro's.
Last book you read?
Last book I read was, what was the one? Mark Cunningham just gave me a book. I forget the title of it. It was a book by an Irish surfer in Hawaii.
Oh, interesting.
So if I had it in front of me, I would share the title, but I forget the title. So there you go.
That's all right. Good name drop with Mark Cunningham.
Yeah, I figure if I can't remember the title, at least I got a Mark Cunningham reference in there, which is fair.
I like it. Best surf film ever?
Searching for Tom Curran. I have to shape my life.
I agree. What is one wave you never have to go back to?
One wave I never have to go back to. Bacchio is that what it was in the Basque Country?
Sopelana. Yep.
Sopelana. And absolutely love the Basque Country, but I could not surf that wave for. And then you see Bobby Martinez getting barreled out there, and you're like, what am I doing? Like, am I just that bad? It turns out, yes. I am.
Yes. That was, that lesson never got old on tour. You're like, oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Good answer. If you could only surf one wave for the rest of your life, you could dreamcast it. Perfect conditions, just your friends, whatever you want. Which wave would it be?
I'd probably go with a wave. I'd go with Rincon. No crowd Rincon. Like,
maybe just you and Tom.
Yeah, but no Sean Thompson. Inevitably he'd backpedal me. But I love you, Sean. I think, give me a right point and I'm a happy man. I don't need much. Just a 4 to 6 foot right point that runs for a few hundred yards, and cold water, warm water, it doesn't matter.
Fair enough. Best person to share a lineup with?
Best person to share a lineup with? Well, my wife and daughter are both dancers, so they don't surf. I would say them, but that doesn't count.
You're in the clear.
I'm in the clear there. I'm just had to preface that. I'd say my brother and friends I grew up surfing with in high school.
That's cool.
We spent years and years in the cold water together, and we don't get to surf a lot together anymore, but surf trip with those guys would be pretty special.
Worst person to share a lineup with?
I would guess consensus answer is Tom Carroll.
He's come up before, sure.
Yeah, but I don't say that because I love Tom and I love spending time with him. I would say just the hordes at Lowers. I don't know, the faceless hordes of e-bike crowds at Lowers that who knows who they are, but they've been surfing there all their lives, and next set wave is all theirs,
a lot of lifers out there.
A lot of lifers out there.
Last one. Finish this sentence. I will next achieve a state of happiness by.
I will next achieve a state of happiness by embracing all the good and all the challenges that come my way, because life is full of both.
That's a great answer. Jake Howard, thank you so much for coming on the lineup. Congratulations with everything you're doing at Surfer Magazine. Cannot wait for the next issue. And man, you got to come back on the podcast. I'm going to be down your way next week. Let's hang out. Let's get a burrito at Pedro's and let's shoot the shit, man. I love talking to you. Let's do it. We'll go surf Lowers with the crew. With the lifer. I'm a lifer. We'll split peaks. You go left, I'll go right. No, there's no debate. All good. That sounds good, man. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you for the time and thank you for the support, and just means the world. And it's just what a joy to be friends for this long and still doing what we're doing. We're lucky. We are lucky. Thanks, buddy. Yeah. All right. Thanks, man.